Welcome to a Chosen Cover Girl, where we talk about living life full of joy, confidence, and faith, as well as everything in between. I'm your girl, Daniela. Today, we are going to be talking about CHOSEN Richardson.
She's a runner, she's a track star. She's a track star. She's a track star. She's a track star. Hey, hey.
We are going to be talking about this situation revolving around her qualification for going to the Olympics in Japan after using marijuana.
So tell me, what happened? What led up to this positive test?
Just honestly, I want to take responsibility for my actions. I know what I did. I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm allowed not to do, and I still made that decision. But not making an excuse or looking for any empathy in my case, but just, however, being in that position of my life, finding out something like that, something that I would say is probably one of the biggest things that have impacted me positively and negatively in my life when it comes to dealing with the relationship I have with my mother. So that definitely was a very heavy topic on me, and people don't understand what it's like to have to, or people do. We all have our different struggles. We all have our different things we deal with. But to put on a face, to have to go in front of the world and put on a face and hide my pain, who are you, or who am I to tell you how to cope when you're dealing with a pain or you're dealing with a struggle that you've never experienced before or that you've never thought you would have to deal with. Like, who am I to tell you how to cope? Who am I to tell you that you're wrong for hurting?
Let's get right into it. What are the things that, we can get out of this situation? And I really, truly believe, I say it 1,000 times over, probably in every single video, that, we learn from each other's story. Our testimonies are here, not for ourselves, but for other people. So just like what CHOSEN can learn from this situation, what is it that we also can learn? And I'm going to tell you what I've learned from this situation thus far. Mental health is paramount. Our mental health comes before anything. It comes before the Olympics. It comes before any medal, any job, any amount of money. It comes before any accolades, anything of the sort. Because what good is it to attain all of these things, to earn, to win, to gain all of these things, but to lose ourselves, to lose our mind, to lose our sanity, our peace, our well-being? What good is it? Companies like Nike and other sponsorship companies are rising up, and they are supporting our athletes. They're supporting CHOSEN, and they're supporting like our tennis star, Naomi Osaka. They are really coming to the forefront, and they're like, we're going to support their well-being. And this is what Nike had to say about supporting CHOSEN right now. We appreciate CHOSEN's honesty and accountability, and will continue to support her through this time. It's a brief statement, but I'm just happy that they weren't quick to try to drop her. Even though she did say that she's using it to cope with her mother's death, they could have really gone in the wrong direction with this, but they took the right stand and they decided to support her. So I am really, really proud of Nike and other companies that are moving in this direction. And I think that we as the public should continue to support her as well. From what I'm aware of, there's a lot of negative chatter, a lot of negative comments that's out there on the internet. And I know a lot of it is coming from people, who represent the competing teams, people who represent countries, other countries that are in track and field. And, they got a lot to say. We all want our country to bring home the gold. Hey, I live in the U.S. and I would love for CHOSEN to bring home the gold. But if it was a Haitian up on that track, I want a Haitian to bring home the gold. So we all want, everybody in the Caribbean or whatever country you represent, you want that person to bring home the gold. But let's not bash CHOSEN because she's she's a competitor. Let's not do that. Let's support her, regardless of whether, you know, we are rooting for somebody else, regardless of if we're rooting for another country or someone who represents our country. Let's continue to support her and her well-being. And whether we feel like she made a silly decision or whether she should have known better. Like, I know many people who think she didn't want it bad enough, because if she did, she wouldn't have done what she did. She wouldn't have made a choice to use a substance that was going to keep her from going to from competing in the Olympics. But I actually disagree. I don't think it's about her not wanting it. I think she just lost focus. That's what I think. And my thing is, that is the trick of the enemy. The enemy wants to distract us. He wants us to lose focus from our dreams, our visions, our goals, and the plans that we have for our lives. He doesn't want God to be glorified by our talents, by our skills, by our gifts. He doesn't want that. He wants us to miss the mark. He doesn't want us to reach the higher calling that we're being called to. And so he distracts us with whatever it is in the moment. So we lose focus. And then before you know it, we're further and further and further, and we've detoured further away from what we wanted to do, from our goal, from our dreams, from our visions. His job is to kill, steal, and destroy. And he does that through distraction. He does that by making us lose hope, making us lose focus on everything that we have that is good, that we've envisioned for ourselves. Now, I told you guys, you know, in my first video that I didn't think my marriage was going to make it through COVID. And it had nothing to do with COVID per se. You know, people are like, oh, a lot of relationships didn't last through COVID because people were spending extra time together. It had nothing to do with the extra time or anything else. It was just some unresolved issues that continue to rear its ugly head. And I started to focus on those issues. I started to focus on the things that were annoying me when it came to my marriage, when it came to my husband. And so in doing so, I started focusing on my future, my next chapter without him, instead of focusing on what was before me and working on what was before me and making it work. But I had already lost focus on it. And I'm going to tell you, it took marriage counseling, it took prayer, and it took for me to self-reflect to bring me back to focus, to bring me back to the vision that I have for my marriage and for my overall life. And that's the question that we have to ask ourselves. What is the goal? Because I lost sight of the goal of my marriage. I lost sight of the goal of my life. What is the goal? What is the goal that we're pressing towards? Because that's what it is. What is the goal? And I oftentimes have this conversation with single women all the time. Like when they're involved with a guy and he's not acting the way they think he should. And I know a lot of times they're like, they wonder what it is that they should do. How should they respond? How should they move forward? And my question is always, what is the goal? What's the end goal here? Are you trying to make him your husband? Do you want a husband, or are you just good with a friends with benefits situation? And I normally almost always know the answer to that question, because 9 out of 10, they're like, especially considering the fact that a lot of them are single and hoping to get married, 9 out of 10, it's, I'm looking for a husband. I want a husband. The end goal is to have a husband out of this situation. So then I have to remind them, don't be short-sighted. Don't be short-sighted. Do not respond how you're feeling in the moment. We got to press past our feelings in the moment and look at the end goal. And if you know what the end goal is, and if you focus on the end goal, then you will know how to respond. You will know how to move forward. You don't need my advice. You'll know what to do. And so that brings me back to Sha'Carri. She was hurting. Yes. She was grieving the loss of her mother. Yes. And who am I? Who am I to tell her how to respond, how to cope? But I truly believe that she lost focus and she got distracted in her grief in that moment, because I'm under the impression that had she stayed focused on the end goal, had she stayed focused on the goal of competing in Japan and stayed focused on whatever her ultimate end goal may be, then possibly she may have made a different choice on how to cope. I am rooting for Sha'Carri because representation matters. I know a lot of people, especially white America, they limit representation to the belief that it falls in the area of race or gender or sexuality, but it's so much greater than that. So many people think, oh my gosh, well, there are a lot of Black athletes who race in the Olympics all the time and who win all the time. They dominate in that field. But it's not just about being Black. It's about representation. It's about seeing yourself in that position. My husband, he is a teacher for an inner city school. And every time he watches Sha'Carri run, he is beaming because he said that she reminds him so much of his students. It makes him so proud to know that his students are represented, that it could have been any one of his girls on that track racing and qualifying for the Olympics in Japan. And so if it makes my husband, if it makes a teacher so proud to see that, how much more so, how much more proud and hopeful does it make girls who look like Sha'Carri, girls who come from the same or similar background as her? How much more so? That is representation. It's not just about color. It's not just about race. Who from the inner city represents me? Who was raised in my same or similar background represents me? It goes deep. So I'm just so happy that Sha'Carri, regardless of whether or not they want to honor her time, at the end of the day, she did that, okay? And I'm glad she is representing young girls who look like her. And whether she gets to run in the Olympics this year, there's a lot of hope. She represents a lot of hope. And she stands to be a role model to so many young ladies, not just because she represents them, but she has integrity. She was truthful and she was accountable for her actions. Not every athlete is, but she is, and she was. So I commend her for that. All right, so those are some of the things that, I took out of this entire situation. Of course, we know that mental health is paramount, that we all need to stay focused on the goal, to press towards the goal, to the higher mark, the higher calling that we are being called to. Let's not be short-sighted. Let's not be like living in the moment. And I feel like there's this whole YOLO culture and we're just here to do whatever that we want without thinking about the consequences of tomorrow. No, let's focus and let's run this race into completion. That's what we're here for. Let's do that. And that representation matters. And it goes beyond just race. It goes beyond just gender and sexuality, And for that person who hasn't seen themselves represented in certain areas, I just look forward to the day that you do. And in the meantime, keep rooting on others until you feel like you are also being represented, whether it's in entertainment, sports, in the movies, whatever area, whether it's in an industry that you want to do. And maybe one day you will be that representation. You will be that representation for others. So guys, I am rooting for Sha'Carri. Let's hope that she can continue race in track and field in Japan. And if you're rooting her on, just go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. And in the comment, let's just talk about, let's cheer her on. Let's cheer Sha'Carri on. And what's your favorite hair color? Is it the orange? Or is that supposed to be blonde? Or is it the purple? And I think she has a blue one, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not gonna have any. I would love to be able to rock orange, some blonde, but that just wouldn't go with me. Listen, if I tried to put any purple hair, my mother would be like, "You are not a teenager." She tried to remind me of that the other day. "You are not a teenager." I'm like, I knew that. All right, guys. See you next time. That's my chair.